My name is Trisha Peters, and I'm a senior at the University of Dallas in Irving, Texas. I'm originally from a southwest suburb of Chicago, and I'm very happy that I moved here for my schooling. I'm currently student teaching at Travis Middle School in Irving, Texas, and I've had the pleasure to work with two exceptional teachers, the first 7 weeks in an 8th grade ELAR setting, and the second 7 weeks in an 8th grade social studies setting. The community at the school is one that I already feel a part of. At Travis Middle School, there are approximately 740 students. About 58% are Hispanic, 21% Caucasian, 16% African American, and then 5% are Asian. About 58% of the student body is qualifying for the free lunch program, and many of the students at home speak Spanish in the household. Many of the students are in the AVID program, which stands for Advancement via Individual Determination, and this prepares them with college readiness skills. In the video lesson I've prepared for you today, I'm in the 8th grade social studies setting. There are 27 students in the class. The desks are arranged in groups of 5. They're not all filled, and there are 7 tables. Classroom discipline procedures is posted up in the room. First is a verbal warning. If that doesn't work, we make parent contact, and it ends with an office referral. So far, we have only had to contact 2 of the parents out of 140 students that we have been teaching, and they have been very receptive. For technology-wise, we have Chromebooks in the classroom, and the teachers were just given iPads, so it is one of my first time using them. Typically, this is a pre-AP class, and there are 4 ELL students, which is most of our periods of the day. We have another teacher push-in for the 4 ELL students, and she works one-on-one with them. This particular lesson covers the Articles of Confederation and the weaknesses of them. The students already have a knowledge on the Revolutionary War and the Articles as we went over different aspects of them from the day before. As a pre-assessment, I did a quick warm-up asking if the students remembered what they were and what they established. In planning the lesson, we chose to include many pictures on the slideshow and ask the students various questions pertaining to the pictures and what they know. We wanted to use a foldable so that ELL students as well as others would be able to get hands-on work and then more discussion for other students that preferred that. I wanted to address the first lesson goal of understanding what the Articles of Confederation was and the factors of it through the pre-assessment debrief. I assessed this quickly to see if the majority of the class remembered. Before getting to the foldable, we addressed questions such as what would happen if the state coined money to lead into the weaknesses. This was done to prep them while they made the foldable. Again, it was an informal assessment I completed as I monitored who spoke up and I asked questions, and I paced the room making sure that they were listening and participating. While completing the foldable, we did this as a whole group. Again, I was pacing. And as a formal assessment, I made sure all the students had completed the foldable with the correct information. For the post-assessment, we went over as a class what each weakness were, and we put it on our hands so it would be for them to see. Everyone got a piece of paper from up here, right? Yes. Haley doesn't. Haley doesn't. Okay, so what were we talking about yesterday? It was the Articles of Confederation. Perfect. Okay, so today we're going to make a foldable of it. Okay, so hold your paper horizontally. Okay, and we're going to make both ends meet right in the middle. So hold it over. So you've got it horizontally. The 2 edges, they're going to meet in the middle. Don't overlap them. Just have them. Need help? Okay, so then on the front of it, we're going to put our title, which is Articles of Confederation. So write it on the top. Articles of Confederation. supposed to be more stars. We're going with it because it's not. Okay, let's say we have 13 stars. What would that represent? Okay, good. So, and in the picture that's supposed to be up here, they're not touching, so they're loose. Just like the Articles of Confederation, it's a league of friendship. So they're all united, but they're loose, right? They're not all a country yet. Okay? So when we're talking about confederation, we're talking about how it's loosely, but they all have that same motive in mind. So this quote up here, we have, with freedom comes responsibility. What does that mean?
So all of them moved over there. They thought they would be like free. They get to make their own rules and all that. But you need to like set a stuff in order. It can't just be a free for all or it'll all come crashing down.
Okay, perfect. So you actually need rules, right? Once you're free, everything just won't come to you. You need to be responsible. You need to set laws. What about like in school? What if we didn't have rules here? What would it be like?
Everything would become like chaos because all the kids would do whatever they want.
Okay, good.
There wouldn't be a school. It would already get burned down.
It would be burned down?
It'd be like
Because there's no discipline? Would you guys even still come to school? No? You wouldn't have any consequences for not learning or for not behaving, right? So that's kind of like our Articles of Confederation. When it starts, we have to actually have some laws. Did the federal government, were they able to make laws? Okay, why couldn't they force them? How many states had to agree?
9.
Good, 9 out of 13, right? So they didn't have much power to actually set laws. Okay, so on the front of our foldable, we're going to put this down. So you start off with your colonists right here. So you're going to do it on the front of it. You're going to copy this. Okay, so that's what it's supposed to look like.
Looks like a staircase.
Yeah, it's a staircase. So you're going to start off right here at the bottom of your foldable. You're going to do a line and you're going to write colonists. This is on the front of your foldable, so you haven't opened it yet. So you're going to start off with a line. And so who was in charge of the colonists before they rebelled?
George Washington
Before they rebelled?
British.
King George. So what image can we use for King George? A crown. Good. So above it, you're going to draw a crown. Okay, so then the colonists start to rebel. So we have colonists versus Great Britain. And what does that call us? What war? Okay, good. What can we draw for American Revolution? What symbol? To symbolize war. Okay, a flag. What else? To symbolize war.
Can you draw like two guns like crossing?
Yeah, you could draw a gun. So make sure it's labeled and you have a picture so far for each one. Kimberly? Okay, so then after they fight the war, we win, and then what do we have? What's our next one? Self-governance. And what's this word? Good. So now they're free and they're independent states. So we'll draw happy people. So then while they're independent, what do they create? Good. So you're going to put that on the side. Right here. And what is this picture? What do you see next to it? Okay, good. Is it easy for him? No. It looks like he's struggling, right? So that's going to describe our Articles of Confederation. So they're trying to make it work. They're doing their first constitution, but they're having some problems. Okay, and then what do we have at the top? Your last one. Your last step up. Good, the Constitution. Why do we have the scale? What? Okay, good. A balance of what? Good. So both the people and the government. And how many branches of government do we have?
3.
Good. So if you remember your checks and balances, each branch is supposed to balance the other so one doesn't become too powerful. So we get that with our Constitution. That's why we're going to have that as our picture. So finish up your drawings. So your Articles of Confederation. Good. And then your last one, you're going to find your last step. And you're going to put U.S. Constitution. Okay, so with the Articles of Confederation, who had more power, the states or the national government? Good, the states. What do you guys think? Should the states or the national government have more power?
States.
Okay, both of you have different opinions. Who wants to share?
Okay, so if the states were to have the like to make everything, there would be chaos, but then they could always like come together to like solve the differences and like work it out together and
Okay.
still be able to rule their own kind of state.
Okay, do you think we see that with the Articles of Confederation?
Yeah.
Yes, them eventually coming together maybe? But they're having a lot of problems, right? Because they're all disagreeing. They all have their own interests. What do you think the national government, Grace?
Because the national government can create order if they have debt with some other country. The national government can collect taxes and give that money for we won't have a problem with any other country.
Okay, did the national government have the power to collect taxes right now? No, not with their Articles of Confederation. So what is this balance, if you guys remember? It's one of your principles of the Constitution. What is the balance between the federal government and the state governments? Do you remember what word we use? It starts with an F. Yeah, perfect, federalism. So that's that balance that we have. That's what we're going to need in our Constitution, because so far in our Articles of Confederation, they haven't figured out that correct balance. Okay, so now you're going to open up your foldable. Okay. And on our first block, you're going to write strengths at the top. Right up here. Strengths. Yep, right here. You're going to put it on your first block. we have is wage war. So Congress had the power to declare war, right? The government does. And why would this be a problem? Do we have enough money for supplies in war at this time? No. Do we have enough men to fight?
No.
Are we paying the men to fight?
No.
No, okay. So while this is a strength that they can wage war, will it actually help us? So, okay, so you're gonna start writing these down. So the first one you should have is wage war. Okay, next one is issue money. Who do they give the power to issue money? The states, who else? Yeah, and the national government. So what happens if each state is printing their own money, and then the government has its own kind of money? How would that be a problem?
Everything would lose value because if they were to travel to another state, they would have to use their money. They wouldn't have it because they'd be from another state.
Right, how do you know what money to use, right? And when you said lose value, if I were to give you all $100 bills, would it all still be worth $100? Or would it be worth less at this point? Less, right? So the more money that they were printing at this time, then the value of it went down. And as Cecilia said, it's confusing. How do you know what money to use depending on where you go? Because all the states have their own money, and then the national government has its own currency too. So the next one you should have is sign treaties. So they can make peace with other nations at the end of war, but if we get into another war, we're probably going to lose. Set up post offices. This is a good thing. We get this from Ben Franklin. Then we have appoint ambassadors. Do you know what an ambassador is?
Isn't it like the hired person?
Okay, so
Like
they're
the-
higher up. Where are they supposed to go? What are they supposed to do? Not battles. So if you wanted to send someone to France, let's say, and you wanted them to speak on your behalf, they would be your ambassador. So they are going on behalf of the U.S. and they're going to talk to other countries. And your last one is settle conflicts between states. So if the states have a lot of power themselves and they're making their own laws, do you think they're going to listen to the national government if it comes in and it's trying to solve a fight between two of the states? Everyone's got it? Yes. Okay, next we're going to talk about weaknesses. So you are going to trace your hand on the middle of your foldable. Okay, so you're in the middle flag and you're going to trace your hand. You can stretch your hand a little bit if it doesn't fit.
Vamos a dibujar un manto. Hacia el tuyo, pero cuidado con tus dedos, no puedes hacer espacios más grandes. Así se queda en el medio. Como un rabito cuando era niña.
Okay, so now what we're going to do is, we just talked about the strengths, which we saw problems in for each one. Now we're going to talk about the weaknesses. So So you are going to use the colored pencils on your desk, or you can use the markers. And we're going to color code each weakness in one of the fingers of your hand. So for your first one, how about your pinky? What do we think of when we think of our pinkies?
British.
Small, weakest, good. And what color do you think we would use? Pink. Good, pink. So for your first one, in your pinky, you're going to write weak central government. So, weak central government. You can write it in pink or you can shade it in pink, but you need to have pink in it. Weak central government. So when we say central government, national government, federal government, it's all the same thing. So no executive branch. We do not have a president right now. We don't have a president yet. So remember, they didn't want another tyranny. They didn't want another King George to happen. So they were giving the states a lot of power, but now their federal government does not have enough power, so it's very weak. Okay? How about our ring finger?
Gold.
Good, gold. Okay. So this one, you're going to put no money, no taxes for our ring finger.
What is yellow?
Yeah, yellow for gold, right? It's a ring finger.
Western boundary disputes. Estaban peleando de quién puede tener cuál de
No
las
money, no taxes.
Even better if this was green.
No money, no taxes. Okay, next one, our middle finger. So that cuts our hand in half, right?
Oh,
Okay, what did we get from the war? What did we physically get?
angry.
Freedom.
Yeah.
Physically, what did we get? We got freedom.
Basic.
Good, land. Okay, so our next one is going to be green for the land. And it's Western boundary disputes. So we have everything from the Appalachian Mountains to what river? Good, the Mississippi. Western boundary disputes. So now they're fighting over who gets the land. So remember, dispute is a fight. So Western.
What's green? Green. Oh yeah.
This word right here, dispute, which side? They're fighting over the land to take off as a law. Okay, now we're on our pointer finger. If someone is pointing at you like this.
Blue. Red.
Red, why?
Really
Yeah, they're probably mad or angry. So our next one is red. Okay, so we have quarreling states. So this means fighting. Okay? So it's not quartering states, it's not like the quartering act that you talked about. It's quarreling with an L. So the states are fighting.
Fighting states.
Yeah. So that's your pointer finger. The red one. The red one is yellow, right? Yeah. So you get ready to put it right here. Yeah, right.
It's not on the right here.
The reason why it's
No, it's not a race.
no, the reason why it's not.
They're not gonna do the closest and then they
They
go
kind
by
of go
the
right
right
to the
one.
market, so.
I'll see you inside.
So you have a vein that goes to your heart that's already behind man.
What's red?
With my bad
Okay, raise your hand if you're done with the red one.
Wham.
Okay.
Fighting
You have 30 seconds, Nick.
Fine.
Okay, so what finger do we have left?
Thumb.
Thumb. Okay, so if I have a thumbs down.
Pretty bad.
When, right, you're
Bad.
sad. So what color do you think? Blue. Blue, okay. So here's our last one. So no international respect. That's gonna be our thumbs.
Okay, no problem. I'm so sorry.
Put in parentheses,
Wait, what's in the thumb?
No international respect. No international respect.
What color is it?
Blue, because it's your thumb. Thumbs down, sad. You ready for the break?
My bad.
I thought the US gained their respect.
Could we pay back our debts?
So they lost faith. We can't always
Okay, while you finish coloring, who could explain this last one? What is no international respect?
because
Not
Because the
respected
states-
internationally.
No, because the states were like against each other and they couldn't really pay back anything they had from the other countries. The countries disrespected them because they didn't see them as a trustworthy allies.
Okay, so we weren't paying back our debts, right? We didn't have money to. We're not taxing them, our citizens. So no international respect. These countries think that we're not going to make it, right? They think that it'll be easy if anyone just comes and takes over, which it would have been. So right now we don't have the respect. They don't think that we're going to last. Okay, now right? So, up here in our hand, we have the Articles of Confederation, right? That's our hand. Look up here. You have your Articles of Confederation, right? Shays Rebellion, we have a group of farmers that are going to rebel against this. They're going to be this closed fist that we're going to draw inside of our hand. Okay? So the picture's not here, but we're going to draw a closed fist inside of it. Sorry, I'm a terrible artist.
I am something. I don't know what I am.
Okay, so these are like each finger. I'm just gonna erase it. Do you get what I mean now?
No. So we just write shape.
Yeah, so just draw a closed fist inside of your hand. And, yeah, just draw it. And inside of it, you're gonna write Shays Rebellion. So this rebellion, this group of farmers is gonna make our Articles of Confederation collapse.
I made a really, really fist.
Okay. I'll give you another minute.
Have your yeah, you raise your mouth with it. Shades rebellion.
Just like your hand made it collapse.
SHAYS.
You got it, Nick?
And then rebellion. And then rebellion.
Wait, what?
Okay, so your hand should be color coded, right?
Yay.
For the weaknesses?
Yay.
Okay, so let's see how much you know. I'm going to leave it up here at first,
Uh-huh.
and then I'm going to take it down and see if you remember. So if we're talking about our thumb, what's our first weakness?
International
No
respect.
respect.
Good, no international respect. How about our pointer finger? Good, and that means they're fighting. How about our middle finger? Good, so they're fighting over the land that we gained from the war. How about our ring finger? Good, they're not taxing them, so we're not getting money. And our pinky? Good, just like our pinky is weak. Okay, let's try it again. How about your pointer finger?
United States.
Okay, your ring finger?
No money.
Good. Your middle finger? Your pinky? Weak central government. And your thumb? Good. Okay, now I'm going to get rid of it. Okay. Let's try it. How about your ring finger?
No money.
Good. How about your pinky?
Weak
central government.
I'm not cheating. Go home.
Yeah, man, let's go.
At least I'm trying. I'm gonna get the next one. I watch it.
Okay, how about our pointer finger?
Pointing States.
Good. How about our thumb? Good. And our middle finger?
Western boundary dispute.
Okay, does anyone think they can do it on their own?
Yeah.
No.
Maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, let's try it again together then. How about our pointer finger? They're angry.
Fighting.
Good. How about our thumb?
No respect.
Our pinky?
Government.
Good. Our ring finger?
No money, no taxes. No money.
Good. And our middle finger? Good. And so remember, these are weaknesses that we're listing, right? These 5 things, we're listing weaknesses of the Articles of Confederation. And what are the Articles of Confederation again?
The founding was
A League of Friendship.
Okay, it's described as League of Friendship. It's our first what?
Constitution.
Perfect. It's our first constitution. Okay. So who wants to try it? Other
Give it up.
As a result of the lesson, my students were able to identify the struggles of founding a new nation after the Revolutionary War. I find this lesson very essential to students' understanding of the Constitution that we have today because they can better understand how hard it was for them to create this government that we have, and then they can use that to compare it to the Articles of Confederation that our founders had first created. During the lesson, we started discussing the strengths of our first Constitution, and I tried to prompt the students with each one of these to see if they could actually understand that they were weaknesses in disguise. At one point during the lesson, it did not seem like they were completely inferring that these were weaknesses, so I modified the way that I was prompting the questions that I had not done in the previous period, asking the students specifically what would happen if states had all the power and if we didn't have a strong national government. In a similar way, at the very beginning, my question for the slides pertained to the pictures, which did not all show up, and I was trying to show that there were 13 stars, and they were separated and connected in order to demonstrate the loose league of states that our Articles of Confederation created. This was the first indication of a real modification that I had to be made for this period because the technology was not working. I then realized I would have to do further prompting for the students because the images that I'd counted on were not following through. I used different assessment modes during this lesson, not strictly just on pen and paper completion, but also through personal communication with the students. I believe that the various assessments I gathered were very beneficial and they could be done extremely quickly. I could then easily modify the lesson in order to engage the students properly or help them to understand better. Completing the foldable was an assessment that was appropriate for identifying the weaknesses of the Confederation and to make sure that the students would not only see it, but to also write it down. I think assigning a weakness to each finger on the hand really helped the students to associate a color or aspect of the finger to that particular weakness. Once the students wrote it, they also had to shade that color, and this engaged the students and gave them a way to more easily remember it. I think that first going through the strengths helped to reinforce how necessary a new constitution was, and by understanding these problems, they could more easily understand the foldable. The post-assessment was also beneficial because it helped them remember each weakness while pointing to the assigned finger. I think that the earlier part of the lesson we looked at the strengths helped them to understand and apply the information, and during the post-assessment, I could see how much of the lesson they understood as a whole, specifically the weaknesses. My favorite part of the lesson was making the foldable because it engaged the students and allowed them to achieve the goals. When the students participate, it helps me to better understand their needs inside and outside the classroom. I can see the schema that they have on a particular topic based on their opinion, and then I can see where to proceed from there. I believe that as a teacher, I am a lifelong learner, and there is always something I can improve upon, and I can learn from the lesson and from the students. In this lesson, I learned that technology will fail us when we need it the most. Most of the PowerPoint slides and beginning of the discussion was based on the images that did not show up, so I realized I quickly needed to adapt despite these problems. After further insight, maybe restarting the computer would have been the first step, but I'm still very pleased with the lesson. As teachers, we need to be able to problem solve and think quickly on our feet. If I were to reteach the lesson, I would have handouts prepared for the students with the images, or at least some images on construction paper ready to be used. This would not only help solve technology problems, but I think it would also be very helpful for the ELL students so that they can have it up close and receive direct instruction from the pictures. I thought that the lesson nonetheless went extremely well, and I'm proud of the majority of the students that mastered the concept. I believe they understand the goal of the Articles of Confederation, how it was not working, and then they can apply it, and when we look at the principles of the Constitution, they can see how they're there to protect the people. I think my instruction aided to their success. I tried to ask questions that would get them to think and anticipate each of the weaknesses. I think my students were most successful in that they were able to understand why the weaknesses of the Constitution were not working, and I think that the least successful part was more of the what of the Articles of Confederation, just further having them grasp that it was our first Constitution. I think I could have done better with this by previewing the lesson with, instead of a debrief, maybe a little video to remind them what the Articles of Confederation were that we had covered the previous day. I think overall this would help the students get back into the mindset and see it rather than just hear it before the lesson. But I do think that they were able to understand the Articles as a weakness and exactly why it was not working, even though they were good ideas. And I think that will later help them apply it when we study the Constitution. I am extremely proud of the progress my students made, even though there were technology problems, and I'm very proud of the way that I delivered the content.